Okay, lovely. So I see a few of us have already started introducing ourselves, which is great. Welcome to session 1 of our 6-session AR workshop called Getting Started with Augmented Reality. Today's focus is on ARMaker. So welcome, and again, take this time to introduce yourself. Let us know where you're joining us from. You can come off mute if you want, or you can absolutely type away in the chat there. It's great for us to see who is joining in and from where, who we're reaching out to, and yeah, just getting the opportunity to network. I see a few familiar faces. I'm glad to see some of my Apple colleagues are in here with me. So welcome, guys, great to have you. If this is your first time joining in with an Apple session, we're welcoming you as well. And thank you in advance for taking the time to join in today. I know we've got some people staying up late for this and some people that have started the day quite early. And then there's us in the UK that are just sort of finishing up for the day, getting ready for the commute home. So thank you and welcome. So my name is Lindsay Stuttard. I'm a digital teaching and learning specialist for one of the ACS international schools based here in the United Kingdom. I am an Apple Distinguished Educator, and I'm currently really excited to be getting the opportunity to share all this with you. This is a passion of mine, of using augmented reality in education. So I'm very blessed to be able to talk with you today. This is our premiere session as an Apple Regional Training Centre. This is something specific to the UK and Northern Ireland, and we just got accredited over the summer. So this is our premiere session. If there's anything that's interesting to you during this session, or you want to follow along with us after, our Twitter handle is @ACSRTC. And my Twitter handle is @Lindsdive85. You can also get hold of me. I'm one of the managers for this regional training centre through our email, which you should all have as well. So in today's session, obviously we've done our welcome and introductions. I'm going to go through just a little brief background on AR and how it's evolved in education, and then we'll get the opportunity to really get hands-on and work with ARMaker, and I'll be able to walk you through things step by step and then answer some of your questions. So while the content may seem like it's quite basic today, this is a progressive course, and it is going to take 6 sessions to go through everything. So as I mentioned already, this may seem like quite a basic beginner's course with ARMaker, but the idea is to give you a different skill set every time that we meet, and those skills will then build upon each other as the course progresses. So things that you learn this week are going to benefit the next session that we have, and then that session will benefit the following session, and so on. The aim is at improving your understanding of AR in education, and it's not just what apps are available and how you can use them, but it's your fundamental understanding of what AR means in education and how you can apply it to what you do in your classroom. The other focus is really maximizing your ability and your students' ability to do content creation. There are a lot of apps that will provide content for you, but the purpose of this one is to empower you to feel confident enough or to get your students feeling confident enough to go ahead and do your own content creation. And then also, as I just said before, it is a progression designed to develop your skill set. So kicking it off in session 1, getting started with augmented reality focus on ARMaker. Now, by the time we get to session 6, we'll be bringing everything that we've learned all together and creating more immersive AR experiences, inspired a lot by the Everyone Can Create lessons that are out there and the different Apple apps that are available on your iPads. In my email, I sent ahead what you would need for this session, which is your iPad. You need the app ARMaker, the photo booth app, which should come standard on your iPad, and the Pages workbook. If you haven't opened that workbook already, it is a Pages file, so you need to make sure that you have Pages either on your iPad or if you have a Mac to be able to view it and interact with it. It's your workbook. You should be able to put into it whatever you want. I've designed it in a way that is similar to how the Apple Teacher portfolios are designed to have it be an interactive resource for you. So our key learning outcomes for this session, number one, is understanding the fundamentals of AR in education. And I hope by going through things step by step with you, you'll be able to see a lot of the fundamentals sort of unfold and how you can begin applying those in the classroom. We definitely want to make sure that you are mastering the ARMaker tools and features, because in order to move to more complex tools, we need to make sure that we understand the basics. And then the last is bringing in the different iPad elements to start integrating into the app ARMaker. So I'd like to open up the discussion now using the chat and ask you to think about what about the topic of AR is bringing you to the session today. So I know that it's some of us quite late in the day and our brains might be a little fried. Some of us haven't had our coffee yet. But what about this topic is bringing you to the session today? What do you hope to walk away with? Or what is there something that you want to try that maybe you haven't before? Anything goes. Just take a minute and go ahead and pop that in the chat. Loving this. So it seems like we've got, we're looking for inspiration. Definitely want to incorporate AR more into my courses, helping teachers implement it. I get more practice to strengthen my skills. Love it. Completely new. Okay, so we've got some novices in here. Fantastic. Virtual examples of concepts, getting inspired. Absolutely. So hopefully by going through these sessions with me, we'll be able to meet what it is that you're looking for when it's coming to use AR in your classrooms. I do also want to apologize. I've just gotten over having a sinus infection, so my voice may fluctuate as I keep talking. Okay. And please do, if you have more ideas, please do feel free to use the chat. As I mentioned before, the workbook is my design for you to help you document your ideas and the progress that you make every time that we have a session together. So some of the things you might want to do either when we get to the end of the session or after the session is over, or some things might not be possible until you've had a bit more of a play around. So in the book, each session is going to be supported by 4 pages. Session 1 is going to focus largely on using ARMaker, photos, and the photo booth. And there's a page there for your key takeaways. Now you can make use of this book as I'm talking, or if there's something someone has said in the chat that you'd really like to jot down as an idea, please use that space for key takeaways. You can type into it, you can draw into it if you've got a stylus. So it's quite flexible tool in that way. Or if you want to add screenshots in, that's also another great one. The next page is then sort of that end of session reflection that we'll come to at the end today, where it's thinking about where do you go now? What can you start to implement? What connections can you make? And also thinking about how you can use AR to reach more learners, almost like an accessibility tool. The third page is then, once you've left this session and before we meet again, a place for you to include any examples of things that you've done from what you have learned in the session and then gone and applied directly into your classroom. So it can be screenshots, it can be videos or screen recordings, anything like that. It's your place to put those types of examples. And if you want to just delete that box and just throw lots of screenshots at it, by all means, make it like a scrapbook. It's your tool, however it works best for you. And then the last page is what I'm going to ask to have completed before we meet again, which are sort of the reflection questions. So from the end of when our session ends today until session 2 starts, think about those questions after you've had a go with ARMaker in your classroom. And what were the things that you learned, the successes, what would you do differently, and that type of thing. And that is sort of the style of how the book is going to support you every time that we learn something new in our AR sessions. So are there any questions about the workbook? Is everyone feeling pretty confident about it? And if you have any issues with opening the file, please email me or let me know and I'll make sure to get you a different copy of it. Lovely. So I want to take a moment just to briefly talk about the history of AR. So you may not know, but AR has been around since the 60s, the concept of AR, of combining some form of alternate reality with our own real world. And this has progressed all the way up to where we are today, with things evolving based on how the technology has evolved. But the concept of AR has been around for quite a long time. And what we see now is that the use of devices like the iPad are going beyond the original intention, with the ability now to support more application of AR in the classrooms quite easily. We've also seen that the content consumption of AR apps is now shifting, and the original ones would come out and they would have science experiments that you could do in your classroom or support different elements of your curriculum. And now the shift is more apps that allow you to be the content creator and not having to rely on someone to develop an app for you or develop a program for you. So you really get to take more of the ownership without needing to know how to code or develop, and make these unique experiences to differentiate for what's going on in your classroom. And there has been a really big push based on the pandemic. In the year 2020, it was surveyed that 75% of product consumers now expect companies to provide an AR experience. So if you're familiar with companies like IKEA that allow you to virtually put one of their furniture items in your home with the correct dimensions and see how it looks, more consumers are looking for those types of consumer experiences, owing to needing to keep our distance, or some countries still being in lockdown or not being able to go to certain locations. And so this will likely mean that there'll be an increase in industry jobs for our students that will end up going out into the workforce. So much as we saw sort of 5 to 10 years ago, an increase in coding and web development and graphic design, those types of jobs, we're likely to see more of the AR and VR to come in the future. So AR by no means is going away. In fact, we're just going to have more of it prevalent in our lives as we go forward. I want to take a moment to talk about the available AR resources to support you on your journey. So over the summer, Apple did release the augmented reality activities for kids. So this is a really good place to start if you're a complete novice with AR, where the activities will be guided step by step for you and how to implement them in your classroom going forward, as well as the ability to make easy content connection with the curriculum that you specifically teach. So those are available to download through the Apple Teacher Learning Center. Additionally, another piece of advice I have is to really look through the AR apps that are available in the App Store, and to start to distinguish between which ones are specifically for content consumption, meaning that when you open the app, there's a collection of things already available for you to use, with not much ability for you to bring your own creations in, or content creation, where you are having this open playground or a blank slate to start building with. And those are the ones that we're really going to be focusing on a lot during these next 6 courses. So let's move on now to mastering the tools of ARMaker. If you've never used ARMaker before, the first time you open it, you'll be greeted with a walkthrough, just showcasing you some of the basic features of the app. But once you've used it quite a bit, you'll end up seeing a purple screen with the start button every time that you join. And the interface is really very simple to use. It's very easy to navigate, and there's not a lot of text. So this is really helpful not only for younger children, but for students that are not native English speakers, because it is very visual and the text is quite minimal. So when you open it up, you get the starter templates. These are made by the app developers that are content for you to start creating an AR scene with, whether it's for storytelling or for demonstrating a concept, creating a provocation. They provided some nice little cartoonish style content for you to play around with. And those are listed under the templates. Whereas the create your own scene option allows you to build with anything that you want to bring into it. So any of your own content. We'll get to that a little bit later on. The second option down there in the middle is called My Scenes. And this is where you can save any of the AR scenes that you have created. And this is a really great thing for students who maybe start something at school and then need to finish it up at home and take their iPad home. They can save their scene, open their iPad when they get home, launch the scene again, and carry on constructing and building. The only thing you can't do at the moment with ARMaker is make a scene and export it. So taking it out of the app and sharing it with another individual. I'm really hoping that at some point ARMaker developers will create that as an option. But at the moment, the scenes have to stay embedded inside of the platform. The third option that we have there is My Library. Now, this is a really sort of underappreciated area. When you start creating more content and bringing this into ARMaker, anything that you bring in will be collated into your library. And if you use ARMaker a lot like I do, your library will start to get really, really big. And once you're in the app, you'll see what I mean, but all of your content will end up stacking on top of each other and sliding up and down menu. And if you've got content that you brought in, say, 3 months ago that you want to get to, that's a lot of scrolling. So it's good to get in the habit of going into your library and sort of purging things periodically, anything that you don't need to have in there anymore. And it's good for students as well who have brought something in that didn't work out well. Get them to go into the library every so often and just select and delete those pieces of content. So we're going to move now into the practical hands-on part with a demonstration. And I encourage you at this point to get your iPad and we'll have a go together. For this, I'm just going to turn my camera off so that I can move away from the computer and focus on the iPad. So we're going to open up ARMaker and you can go ahead and pick whichever scene content that you would like. There's lots to choose from, lots of really fun things, whatever you prefer. I'm going to go ahead and do the tiny town. And when you open up one of these starter templates, you can get a preview of the type of content that is available. It won't show you everything, it will show you just some of the designs, but this is the type of content that you'll have ready to get you started. And so this is a really great way to get to learn the tools and the features. So once you've clicked start in the template, you're going to be moving your iPad around to scan for a flat surface, and the directions are there at the top for you as well. So this is really helpful for kids. But right away, when it finds a flat surface, it's going to bring up a grid, and it will make as many grids as it can for any flat surface that it can find. But for this one, I'm going to be building on top of the table. So I want to make sure that I select the grid that is on the table here. Now, if your white is struggling, such as my tabletop is completely white, I've noticed with some iPads that a white surface is not the best to build on because of the reflection of light. But if you've got a white surface and it works for you like mine, then please, by all means, go ahead. Now, once you're happy with your grid size, you can just tap on the screen. And what we can see that has happened is it's given me now a defined space to work in. And this is really helpful for younger learners or for students that are just starting out with ARMaker, because it means they're not going to just be throwing things everywhere. There is a specific area that they have to work within, specific constraints. And if they try and go out of there, they're not going to be able to. Which leads me to explain about this circle in the middle. This is a target, and it moves based on how you move the iPad camera. So if you get close to something, it's going to come closer. If you get further away, it's going to go further away. And this target will indicate where things are going to lay in your defined space. Now, on the right-hand side, we have some tools. We have redo and undo. So if you put something in and you need to take it out, you can undo. Or if you delete something by accident, you can redo. You've got your place button, which allows you to place the content anywhere in your scene here in your space. You've got arrows that allow you to move things up and down, which I'll explain in just a moment. And then we've got a relatively new feature, which is the grid. So if you notice, as I move my iPad around, I'm not being forced to put my target anywhere specific. But if I bring the grid on, now the target is going to move almost magnetically based on where it is in the grid. Okay. And some people like that, some people prefer more of the free flowing. So it's completely up to you, whatever your preference is. I think for younger children, it might be best to give them the grid so that that target is not moving around too much. The magnetic feature here does really help. So those are our tools on the right-hand side. What we have on the left-hand side is our content library. So anything associated with the scene is going to be at the top. And as you scroll through, there's quite a lot to choose from for this particular packet. But as I get further down, I'm going to start to see my content that I have created. And so you can see I've done a lot of stuff with ARMaker in the past. So there's lots of content that I really don't need anymore and should actually take my own advice and go through and purge some of it. But we're going to go ahead and start building our tiny town. So I'm going to pick the road here. And as you can see, what mine has done is automatically stand upright. Now, there's two things you can do. You can leave your content standing upright, or with your finger touching the screen and flipping up, you can then lay it down flat. If you would take your fingers and pinch or stretch on the screen, you can then adjust the size of whatever content you're trying to bring in. And then as you move your iPad, you can then determine, well, which direction is it going to lay? So go ahead and start bringing in some of the content, whatever content you'd like, doesn't matter. And let's try and put some of those things together. And all I'm doing is tapping the content every time I want to bring it in, and then using the place button. And so I'm just going to go ahead and throw some roads down here. Like a very tiny town. It's whatever you want. So whichever starter pack that you have picked, if it's the same as mine, and follow along, or if you picked your own pack, that's perfectly fine too. So I've got some roads there, which I'm quite happy with. The next thing I want to do is look at the extra content that's in here. So I've got some cars. Now, if I keep the car flat, it's going to have a bit of a glitch, but it's also not going to make it look like it's on the road. So I need to flick my finger down to get it to stand up. So we have, it's very weird, but flick up to lay down, flick down to stand up. I'm not sure why that is, but it is the way it is. And again, you can shrink those things right down to the size that you need. And then it does give the appearance, really, that that car, almost like a piece of paper, is standing up. And this is the beauty of working with augmented reality, because students could absolutely just draw these things on paper, but it's so much more fun when they get to actually create these types of scenes. I'm going to go ahead down to the buildings now. I'm going to go ahead and just create a simple little building here. Again, just turning my iPad. It's a bit finicky with that grip, so I'll just turn that off for a moment. And you can absolutely jump between using the grid and not using the grid. That's completely up to you. And so now we have, in essence, this nice little building standing there with the cars driving around. So we're constructing this little tiny town. And there is a lot more to choose from. So if I want to get really creative and bring, extra details, and this is where children can just get lost with their imaginations. And we can do additional things. Now that we've brought some content in, we can start to have a bit of the interactive fun. So I'm going to bring in the light here, and I'm just going to pop that on the corner. Now you'll notice that down here in the corner, that lamp is still selected. And this is where we can add an extra level of interactivity. So if I tap on that, I get a whole range of animation options that pop up. And these animations can be attached to anything that you put in your scene. So it's really good to support things like a science concept and having something like the solar system in orbit, or focusing on a character, or attaching it to a particular vocabulary word. So we can do things, and if we focus on the light there, we can make the light blink. We can make it pulse, growing and shrinking. We can have it spin around both ways. We can have it go clockwise, and we can have it go counterclockwise. We can make it vibrate, so just doing a slight shaking there. We can have it moving. And when you've got those moves, you can also adjust how many, what the distances it's going to go. So you can see I can adjust those there. Make it go really wide or make it very small there. Forward and backward, and then the same up and down. So beyond just basic scene creation for storytelling, you can absolutely use ARMaker to demonstrate specific concepts. And this is a really powerful way of getting students to connect to the content in a more concrete way, rather than just abstract. And the last one we have there is orbit, where something is just going to go around a circle. And again, this is something really great for demonstrating the solar system. So I'm just going to put it on blink for now. And again, as long as your target is underneath one of those items, you can just tap on it. Again, move under the item and tap on it. And I can select another one. So if you want to use this to demonstrate patterns with children, this is really great as well. So how are we doing so far? Is everyone keeping pace with what I'm talking about? You can just give me a thumbs up. Yep, not a problem, Lindsay. I'll be able to send that over to you through email. If you've signed up through the course, I should have your email, and I can get that sent out to you, not a problem. Okay, so we're going to move on, and I'm going to talk about the new option. So over here, we have new. And inside the new option is where we are able to create some new content. There are some basic three-dimensional shapes that you can customize, you can decorate, you can do all sorts of fun things with. The kids really like working with these. They're really engaging and fun. And we have the flat, plain, two-dimensional square as well. We have a drawing tool where we can adjust the thickness of that drawing tool. It's like a really, really big one for coloring the whole thing in. Or we can get really, really small. Okay. And so then that ends up becoming a piece of content that we can save. So once we're happy with it, we can click the check and click OK. And then that will have gone. There we go, right there. And then that is something that we can bring in and just place anywhere. So if you think about children, allowing them that creativity right within the app, it just helps it to go to the next level of that content creation. So let me go back into new, and you might have noticed there's a few other things. So we can apply that same concept of drawing and writing directly onto our 3D shapes. But not only with the drawing, we can also, clear that out, we can also bring in content. The camera allows you to take a photograph live, no matter where you are, of whatever is around you, and bring that into our scene. Or else we can go to our folder, and your folder will then access any content that's in your photo library of your iPad. So I've got a few different things here, such as this one. You click the check, and your photo can either come in just like this, or you can wrap it around some of the different shapes. So I want to pause for a moment in ARMaker, and we're going to switch now to the photo booth app. I have a question about how to lay something flat. So if I've got a tree here, some of these objects are meant to stand upright, and then some of them are meant to lay flat. So if I've got a tree, I'll just make it quite big so you can see. If I want it to lay down, I have to flick up. And if I want it to stand up, I have to flick my finger down. And it's just a simple flicking of my finger on the screen. So it's up to go down and down to go up. It's very strange, but that's how it is. So I'm quite happy with that tree. I'm going to pop that tree just right there. But one of the things I wanted to show you as sort of an extension from just using either the drawing tools in ARMaker or the content library that's there is the power of starting to make use of what's on your iPad in other apps to then bring it directly into this type of platform. So I'm going to jump out and I'm going to go into a photo booth. Now, if you haven't played around with photo booth before, it's really fun. Hello. There's lots of fun filters. You can use it on your front camera or your back camera. For this particular one, we're going to use the Kaleidoscope, which is right down here at the bottom. And tap on that. I'm going to flick the camera around. So you've got the camera option here. And what that is going to do is it's going to apply a filter to the camera and make it look like a kaleidoscope. I've got some just different items here. I've got some Post-it notes. I've got some Lego, straws, all things of different colors. I'm just going to sort of make a mismatch of them. And as you can see, as I move around, whatever's in the center triangle is what I'm working with. But the beauty of this is if I pinch my fingers, I can make that kaleidoscope small. And if I keep my fingers, if I keep one finger on the screen, I can then move what the camera is actually looking at. And as you can see, it makes some really beautiful shapes and designs. We've used this a lot with early childhood to make things like wrapping paper for Christmas presents, or to take a photograph like this and then use markup and find different shapes. And the reason I'm showing you this is a really fun way of using what's in the iPad and then being able to make these beautiful types of patterns, which you can then bring into something like ARMaker for decorating inside a house and making wallpaper and so on. So once I've got sort of the layout that I'd like, I'm gonna try and, that's quite nice. I'm just gonna press the white button in the middle. And what it will do is it will then make that photograph for me. And that does automatically save directly to the camera roll. So have a go with whatever you've got around you. It doesn't have to be small items, it could be big items. Kids love doing this to their faces, which is quite fun. But it can really be anything. And you do end up getting these beautiful designs. If you go really, really small, I'll just go back to the camera here. If you pinch really, really small, you tend to lose a bit of the texture of what you're trying to photograph. So I recommend not going terribly small so that you can maintain some of the patterns or some of the different shapes that you're photographing. But it's a really fun one. I think it's quite underused in general, but you can get a lot out of it. So anyway, I'm going to take one more. That's quite nice. And now you can see I was playing around earlier, I've got a collection of different ones. So a great activity as well to get the kids up and moving around the classroom and photographing different things. So we're going to jump back into ARMaker now. There's all the stuff I was photographing. My scene should still be there that I was working on, as long as I didn't close the app. I'm going to go to New. I'm going to go into my folder, and I'm going to select one of the photos that I took. And you can see right there. The only thing I'm going to say about ARMaker that I think is really important is you'll notice this is a standard photograph size, which is about a 4:3 ratio. But what you'll notice is ARMaker has given me all this extra space. They work on perfect square. So anytime you're bringing content into ARMaker, if you don't fill that perfect square, there will be sort of gaps or open spaces. So what I like to do is just sort of stretch this out to fill it in, or else go into my photos and crop it perfectly. And this will be an important thing to remember when we get to session 2, because it's something that we need to know ahead of time, especially to support our students. So if we're happy with that, I'm going to click the check. And then again, I can see it either as a flat 2D piece of content, or I can stretch it out or wrap it around different shapes. Make different cubes. I quite like that one. Or a cone. So I'm going to go back and do the cube. And I want to bring this in as a piece of content. So I'm going to click on the check here. Okay. And so now scroll below that pack again. Remember, it has built-in content, so we want to make sure we can access our things. And there we see is my cube. And so I'm just going to press place. And I'm going to show you one other tool that I didn't get to mention earlier, which is the arrows. So I'm going to bring that shape in again. So I've got two of them, but I want to stack them one on top of the other. So to do that, you're going to line them up, and on the right-hand side, you've got those arrows. So if I haven't placed an item yet, I can now tap those arrows and I can raise them up on that Z axis up there. You can also use the grid to help you with placement if you need. So rather than it being that fluid motion, it ends up being that more magnetic motion. I quite like the fluid one. I'll make that just a little bit bigger. And then again, with those items selected, you can make some really fun works of art. It's like that. And so these are really fun for kids, especially those that are new to AR, are new to 3D shapes, are new to working with patterns, or just working on an iPad in general. Now, one of the final things I want to talk about is when we finish creating our scene, and we don't have the ability to export directly from ARMaker and place our scene somewhere else. This means that we have to use the other tools that are available. So when you're finished with your content, we're going to click the arrow up here, which is going to hide this menu away. And what you may notice is now all of the barriers are gone, the grid's gone, the target is gone, and we've got just our scene. But you also might notice that there are two tools that have appeared at the side. One is for taking screenshots and the other for screen recording. But one of the critical pieces of information I will tell you is do not use the built-in screen recording of ARMaker. Do not use this one. And the reason is if you do use it, you will end up with a video that is very bumpy and looks like it's struggling to load. So I would recommend using the iPad's screen recording feature, which you can access from your control center. Mine's currently recording because we're doing a Zoom, but this is where you could go. And I would use this one. And I know that you do end up with these little 4 buttons in the way, but because you can crop your videos in photos, I always tend to just film a little bit further back and then I can crop those out after. This is also a great way for children to get up and move. So if they're trying to do storytelling or they're trying to lay their audio over in explaining about their scene they've created, then they can get really up close to things and provide more interesting scenes and shots and so on. So they can get really creative. They can shake the iPad as they're recording. They can move it around like they're flying. I mean, there's a whole lot of ways they can get really creative just with how they videotape their scenes. So there's a lot of creative possibility there. So any screen recordings or any screenshots of your scenes, they will save to your camera roll. And then they can be either uploaded to different platforms like Google Classroom or Schoology, or for us it's PowerSchool or for Seesaw, or they can be embedded into other apps such as Book Creator, or putting into Keynote, or putting it onto the Google Drive. If they're videos, anywhere that videos are accessible, you can use these. So there's a lot of flexibility in that regard. Okay, so that really is everything that I have to share about ARMaker when it comes to creating a scene. Basically, there's just no limit to the creativity, the ways that your children could end up going, your students, or you creating something as a sample lesson to be then conveyed to them. The final piece is, now that we've finished with our scene, and I want to use it again, I'm not going to work on it now, but I don't want to lose everything I've done. I want to go up to the 3 lines here. We have reset, quit, and we have save. If I click on save, it will take a quick screenshot of my scene so that I can see it later on and remember, that's the scene. but I can also put in the text. So I'm just going to call this a test storytelling. When I'm happy with that, I click Save Scene, and it has saved it to the main menu. Now, the other two options are to reset. Reset is a handy tool in case when you're scanning originally to get that grid, you tap on the screen and actually your grid's too small. You can come over to the menu and reset, and it will allow you then to start scanning again. And then obviously quit. Yep, takes us back to the main menu. So ARMaker is a really simple tool to use. There's a lot of potential for it, and it's a great one for students for getting started with augmented reality and also starting to play around with content creation. So we've had students as young as, say, 4 and 5 play around with ARMaker, and I'm sure there are other schools that have had kids maybe as young as 3 that have been able to make use of this. We've also had teachers take on using the create your own scene option and create story prompts or provocations for students to get them thinking. Maybe it's a scene where there's lots of pollution everywhere, and how are we going to handle this? What steps do we need to take? Maybe it's set up as something like an I Spy, where you're trying to get the students to really use critical thinking. So there's lots of different ways. Math concepts as well is a great one. So we're going to jump out now and go back into our keynote. We're just coming up to the end now. And I'd like to invite you, I'll put my camera back on again so you can see I'm still here. I'd like to invite you at this time to engage in one more discussion question. So thinking about everything that we've talked about now and the potential that is there for utilizing ARMaker, really no matter what age of students that you're working with, in what ways could you begin to apply what you've learned? If you want to come off mute and just share out loud, by all means, I invite you to. Otherwise, please go ahead and put your thoughts in the chat. Being able to share, especially with a group that is this diverse from lots of different places, we all might have access to different curriculums, and it would be great to see what your thoughts are so that it can potentially inspire others, or maybe give others pause for thought of, oh, I never thought about utilizing it in that way. So please go ahead and take a moment to pop down your thoughts now that you've seen ARMaker in action, how to bring in some content from other places, what you're thinking going forward now. I'll just give you about 30 seconds or so. I love that we've got tying in coding with this and making virtual mazes. We've got tessellations for mathematics, virtual animations for physics, numerical problems, visualize, very true, visualize. Solving story problems, absolutely. So you can see we've already had a smattering of new ideas, whether it's art and creativity, or whether it's physics and mathematics. But the key element is this is very visual. And all kinds of AR work is going to be very visual. So for our students that are constantly surrounded by screens and are surrounded by visual stimulation, this is now a tool that can leverage what our creative elements are. We know that a lot of work that's being done on these devices is so important for developing different types of skills. Now being able to create content using augmented reality is really going to be next level. So thank you so much. Please just keep putting those ideas down. If there's anything that you've seen that's been shared either by myself in the demo or through the chat, please do make a note of that in your workbook, because I know once the chat goes away, it's kind of hard to remember later on what someone else had said. So that's why that space is there for you. So anything from the chat that you go, oh, I hadn't thought about that, that's a really good way I could connect this, add it into your key takeaways. Even if it's just screenshots and so on. And additionally, after this session has ended, please take a look at the second page of the session 1 section, which is all about how you can make those curriculum connections and preparing your students to use ARMaker. More ideas coming in. This is just lovely. Thank you. Please do also share what you learned today. If you, after this session, just you can't stop playing and you want to have a play around, please do share what you learned. Not only does it help the wider community for everyone who is starting their journey with AR, but it also helps me and the other managers of our regional training center to see what has inspired you, and then helps us to think about our next steps going forward to support you on your journey. So we have the hashtag AppleRTC, and you can tag us at ACSRTC as well. I want to point you in the direction of one more resource that could be really helpful. It's my book called The Journey Through Augmented Reality. It's free on iBooks to download, and it does talk a lot about the use of ARMaker in lots of different ways. So I started writing it when I began my journey on learning how to use these different AR tools. And I've documented visually as well a lot of the things that I came up with at that time. So it's quite a handy resource when you're just starting out to dip into, just to get even more ideas. If you're like me, I can read through a list of text and I can make meaning of it, but sometimes seeing it very visually is going to stick in my mind a lot more. So our next steps. We have session 2 available for you now to go ahead and register for. So this will be happening in 2 weeks' time. It will be on, I believe it's October the 11th, I want to say. Yes, Monday, October 11th. I'm trying to give you 2 weeks between us meeting so that you get the opportunity to work with your students and be able to have a go using what you've learned today. Additionally, I know that some of us are facing sort of off again, on again distance learning. I do want to highlight that if your students have ARMaker at home on their devices, whether it's a school device or a personal device, and they are isolating, this is still a really great way for them to connect to you. So you can give them a specific type of task and they can complete that using ARMaker going forwards. So don't think it's limited to just in the classroom. During our lockdown here in the winter, we managed to run an entire, I think it was an 8-week AR playground for students who met in through Zoom. We walked through the directions, and then they were able to take away from that session and then start building with ARMaker and making these lovely scenes, and then sharing those videos of what they had created back to me through our Seesaw platform. So don't think it's limited to only a face-to-face experience. Absolutely something that can be done at home as well. And we are finishing up just slightly early, but I wanted to thank you for joining in today and allow you at this point to either come off mute and ask any questions or to dip out at this time. So thank you for joining in, and I'll just wait if there are any questions. You can come off mute or you can pop them in the chat if you need to. Very welcome. Again, I apologize for the voice. Very welcome. So again, make sure I'll just put that QR code back up to join in for session 2, where we will be building upon everything that we've learned in this session and taking it to the next level. So do make sure you sign up for that one. Thank you. Enjoy the rest of your day.